walked so many miles in his job as a mail carrier that when he wasn't working, he just wanted to rest his legs. When she was in what she called a mood, she said Dad used to be a lot more fun and that he was getting old before his time. I had my survival guidebook open in my lap, though it was too bumpy to read now. The book was old and dog-eared, with coffee stains on the cover. I'd bought it at a garage sale for 25 cents. The compact, wiry man who sold it to me, a man everyone just called Howie, was famous for writing a book about climbing in the bluffs outside our town. As he took my quarter for the book, his eyes twinkled and his eyebrows danced above them like gray caterpillars. "Going on some adventures?" he said. The anticipation in his voice told me he'd been on many himself. "I hope so," I said. "This book is a classic. Take it out to the woods. Practice a little." That was my plan. I had it open to the page about trapping small animals. I wouldn't be able to practice that where we were going, but I liked to imagine it anyway. I gazed into the woods now, inviting, mysterious. If we had time, we could stop and explore. But in case you hadn't noticed, adults are always in a hurry. They drive by most of the best stuff in a big rush to get somewhere else. In our case, the motel. So I was glad to be taking our little truck off the main road, bumping over the rocks into this forest where we couldn't see far ahead of us, and each curve in the road opened onto something new. But even I could see that the way the road was deteriorating, it would be hard for big logging trucks to get through here. And if it had once been for logging, it probably wasn't used anymore. Dad must have been thinking that too, but he wasn't saying anything. The road at first had been bumpy washboard, wide and sunny, with enough room for 2 vehicles to pass. Scrub alders and a few small firs stretched on either side of the road, bordered by some wild roses, not yet in bloom. Snow had begun to soften into melting, but the sides of the road still held pockets of it, glistening in the sun. It was only April, still cool enough for our hike in the Grand Canyon. The Grand Canyon was my idea. I never imagined we would actually get to do it. Mom and Dad had surprised me with a card for my 13th birthday, which was last month. The card had a picture from a magazine glued to the front of 3 people standing on a rock outcropping, overlooking mile after mile of folded, red-earthed canyon glowing in the light. Mom had labeled the 3 people Mom, Dad, and Francie. Now the road had narrowed. There was only room enough for 1 vehicle. The woods had changed, too. Huge firs and cedars rose on both sides of the road, their branches dipping into our path in places. The sunlight was mostly blocked out, just winking through feathery cedar fronds in a pretty pattern. I loved the deep-scarred bark of the Douglas firs, like the skin of a very old person's face. I rolled the window down. The perfume of cedar and damp earth drifted in. If I wore perfume, which I didn't, it would have to smell like this. Mom wiped her hands on her jeans. Her hands get sweaty when she's nervous. We always teased her about it, but I didn't think it was a good idea to tease her now. Neither Mom nor Dad was saying anything, but it wasn't the kind of comfortable silence we usually had in the truck on our long drives, where Mom might suddenly read out a crossword clue she'd been trying to solve for half an hour. It was the kind of silence where Mom was trying not to blow her top, as she called it, because if she said one word, it would be like blowing a radiator hose, which I had seen once. All that hot steam and water comes rushing out, and there's nothing you can do to stop it. I daydreamed about the kind of tree forts I could build in these woods. It looked to me like it wouldn't be that hard to find a frame of crisscrossing branches to use as a platform, and if I had my axe, which I didn't, I could chop up some of that deadfall to build the platform. Dad said we wouldn't need the axe on the Grand Canyon hike. I had no nails either, of course. The thing about a Grand Canyon hike is that you want your pack as light as possible. You descend about a vertical mile into the canyon from the rim, or so the website says. That's the easy part. The hard part comes when you have to climb back out. I'd trained by climbing the bleachers at school with my pack on, loaded with a bunch of binders and books. Sometimes Mom joined me, but not always. Even though she's the guidance counselor at the school, so it's easy for her to meet me, after school tends to be her busiest time. We each had light summer sleeping bags and just the clothes we'd need. 1 long-sleeved shirt, 2 t-shirts, 1 pair of pants, 1 pair of shorts, a spare pair of socks, underwear, a warm jacket.